only in part, but the other saw it in full. And I believe this was due to a choice. So in Exodus chapter 16, the people of Israel, they've left Egypt with God's help. God uses a series of disasters to convince Pharaoh to let his people go from slavery. Most of us are very familiar with this story. And the Israelites cross the Red Sea to safety. But in the desert, God tests them and invites them to trust and obey. And it takes just 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And the people begin to grumble against Moses, against Aaron, and against God. And in Exodus 16, verse 3, we read about how they complained. They say, "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots and ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." And then the Lord speaks. He hears the Israelites grumbling. And he tells Moses he's going to rain bread from heaven, later revealed to be manna, and he's also going to send quail in the evening to provide meat. And as God speaks, his glory is revealed to the Israelites. In verses 9 to 10, we read, "Then Moses said to Aaron, 'Say to the whole congregation of the people of Israel, Come near the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling.' And as soon as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the people of Israel, they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud." So we may ask ourselves, why did God conceal himself in the cloud? Why didn't he show his kabod fully? And the reason is because God is so holy that seeing his glory in full, especially for the sinful Israelites, would have led to death. And because of their sinful desires, the Israelites would not have been able to stand in the presence of God. We can go forward to Exodus 19, verses 20 to 21, when God explains this instruction to Moses. So it reads, "The Lord came down on Mount Sinai, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. And the Lord said to Moses, who was there on the mountain, 'Go down and warn the people, lest they break through to the Lord to look, and many of them perish.'" So what God is instructing Moses to say is that if the Israelites see God in their current state, they're going to perish, because God is holy, and that holiness would just completely overwhelm them, some of them even to the point of death. So that's one side, those who didn't really see the fullness of God's glory. But Moses was different. He treasured the Lord. Instead of asking for meat and bread like the Israelites, he asked for God's glory. So up until that point, God had been speaking with Moses from the cloud. But there's something very interesting in chapter 33, that we see Moses suddenly wants to know God even more. And in verses 18 to 20 of chapter 33, a very, very powerful verse, we see Moses saying to God, "Please show me your glory." And the Lord said, "I will make all my goodness pass before you, and will proclaim before you my name, the Lord. But you cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live." And then afterwards, God puts Moses in the cleft of a rock, covers him with his hand, and then passes by. And in the next chapter, the Lord really does come down in a cloud, stands with Moses, and proclaims his name. And because Moses was willing to seek God in this way, suddenly God is able to share his character with Moses in a way that hasn't been done in the Bible up until that point. And God proclaims his name and says, "I am the Lord God, merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, keeping steadfast love to the 1,000th generation, forgiving sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty." And Moses comes back from this mountaintop face-to-face encounter with God a completely changed person. And his face shines so brightly that he has to put a veil over it, and because it will overwhelm the people in the camp. So that's the Israelites, and now here's Moses, who saw God's kabod and was radiant with it. So we can compare and contrast these two examples. One, God had to conceal his kabod. The other one, God was able to reveal it. For the Israelites, God concealed himself in the cloud, although he was able to reveal some of it through manna and quails. But for the other, the Lord spoke to Moses face to face. And again, why did God conceal himself from the Israelites? I believe this happened because the people were only craving for meat and bread. And they weren't really looking for God. God was just a means to the end, and the end goal was มี